अथ द्वितीयोऽध्यायः सांख्ययोगः भाग 2 चैप्टर 2 संख्या योग पार्ट 2 नास्तो विद्यते भावो नाभावो विद्यते सतः उभयोरपि दृष्टोऽन्तस्त्वन्योस्ततत्वदर्शिभिः. It is seen that one feels extreme discomfort due to bodily experiences of excessive heat and cold and the like. If this is the case, then what is the experience for one who remains unconscious of the soul even unto the moment of a very painful demise? How can they realize that heat, cold and pain to be impermanent, and how can they imagine the eternal reality of the soul's immortality? Such questions and bewilderment is clarified by Lord Krishna with the words, in the impermanent like heat, cold, pleasure and pain there is no duration, and in the permanent as the eternal soul there is no cessation. It must be understood that this nature of the duration and cessation of things in this world cannot be ascertained by one lacking spiritual intelligence. Lord Krishna emphasizes the point that the reality of the duration and cessation in the material existence has been perceived by those elevated souls who have attained the ultimate truth. The eternal reality of the soul's immortality is revealed in various places in the Vedic scriptures, and this has been realized by those who have achieved this understanding. Avinashi tu tadviddhi yen sarvamidattam. Vinasham vyasya न कश्चित् कर्तुमर्हति. In this verse, the Supreme Lord Krishna emphasizes the conclusive position of the soul with the word avyayasya, meaning indestructible. How this is to be understood is given by the word yena, meaning by which, indicating the difference between the soul and the physical body which the soul pervades. This pervasiveness is so extremely subtle that it is impossible for anything to cause the destruction of its indestructible nature, because whatever would be attempting to destroy it is also completely pervaded by it as well. Antavant ime deha nityasyoktaha sharirina. Anashino prameyasya tasmadyudhyasva bharat. It might be questioned that if the soul is eternal due to the impossibility of ever being able to be destroyed, then why is it that feelings of remorse arise at the demise of family members and loved ones? To clarify this, Lord Krishna states that it is only the physical body which is made up of the 5 fundamental elements of material existence, being earth, water, air, fire and ether, and which is the vehicle for enjoying the fruits of one's actions, which is subject to destruction. Countless mothers and fathers, and countless sons and daughters, all established with experience in this world, have come and gone, and will come and go in the future. There are countless of places of joy and countless of places of grief in the worlds, but only the unintelligent are affected by their influence and not the spiritually intelligent. The soul is always eternal, but what the soul is pervading, which is known to be both the physical body and the subtle body of all living entities, is not eternal and subject to destruction. Only what is eternal can be determined as being truly real. What is not eternal can be deemed as unreal. So there is no doubt, however, that the physical body is perishable and hence not eternal, as it is composed of destructible substances. This is on the authority of the Vedic scriptures. It might be wondered that if the soul is eternal and indestructible, why is this not perceived at the time of death? This is also clarified by Lord Krishna with the use of the word apramesya, meaning inconceivable. It is not possible to cognize the soul as it is this or it is that, because not being on the material platform, although embodied in a physical body, there is no material conception to compare it to by the strength of one's mind. Unless and until one has received the mercy of the Supreme Lord by the direct connection of the authentic spiritual master, who is in the line of one of the 4 empowered and authorized channels of disciple succession, there is no possibility of perceiving the soul. It is to be known only in this way. This is on authority of the Vedic scriptures. Whatever apprehension one experiences in the physical body, that apprehension is destructible, but the soul is never subjected to this. To the contrary, the soul is apprehended only by the apprehension of I know, I am, I experience, etc., and as it is immortal, the soul should never be lamented for. Neither should the body be lamented for, because it is perishable. Therefore, Arjuna is being instructed to unsnare himself from his delusion and do his duty. Ye ena vetti hantara yaschayana manyate ha. Ubhau taun vijanito nayam hantin hanyate. In this way, after establishing the immortality of the soul, Lord Krishna informs Arjuna that for anyone to believe that it is possible for the soul to be slain, or anyone believing that they can be responsible for the slaying of the soul, are both in complete ignorance. Not being able to fathom the intrinsic nature of the soul, they cannot realize that the soul is never the instigator of any action, nor is the soul ever the recipient of any action. Jayate mriyate va kadachin. Nayam bhutva bhavita van bhuya. Azo nityah shashvatoyam purano. Nhanyate hanyamane sharire. As to questions of how the soul is neither the instigator of any actions or the recipient of any actions, Lord Krishna explains that the soul, being eternal, is not subject to the 6 modifications of material existence, which are birth, being, growth, transformation, diminution and death. The soul is never born and never dies at any time. How can this be? It is not that the soul did not exist before and will not exist in the future. The soul exists eternally, but opting the experiences of the material existence accepts a physical body. What did not exist in the past but is manifested only in the present is called conceived, and that which exists now but will cease to exist eventually is called dead. But the soul is not conceived, as it eternally exists, and it will never die because it is immortal. With the 2 words Ajay meaning unborn and Nitya meaning eternal, it is made clear that the 2 modifications of birth and death are not applicable in regards to the soul. In order to also negate the idea of the soul possessing any modifications by even being, Lord Krishna explains that the soul is everlasting, which means it is free from being or unbeing. The modification of any growth of the soul is neutralized by the word Purna, meaning ancient, that it always existed as it is. One possessing a body grows by the increase of the bodily parts, but the soul, being bodiless, does not increase, it is the same eternally. The remaining 2 modifications of transformation and diminution are rendered inapplicable by inference in understanding that the soul, being eternal without any need to increase, remains as it is and is changeless. Hence, the soul, being bereft of any of the 6 modifications of the physical body, can never be destroyed even when the physical body is destroyed. Vedavinashina nityam enmajam vyayam. Kathas purushah parth ka ghateti hantikam. As to remove any doubts concerning the Vedic injunction against the killing of cows and the killing of a Brahmana such as Drona, the perpetrators of these heinous crimes go directly to hell to suffer at the termination of their material existence. To mitigate this, Lord Krishna tells Arjuna that one who knows the soul to be indestructible and thus eternal as well as unborn and unmodifiable, although uniquely different within every body, knows that no one in any way can cause the destruction of the soul. Who is the doer in the action of killing? Whom can one cause to be killed? Can one be the agent in the death of the soul? The answer is no to all, and it is indicated that there should be no doubt about the veracity of the Vedic scriptures regarding the sin incurred either when one causes another to be killed or when one is directed to kill another. By this the Vedic injunctions prohibiting cow slaughter and the slaying of Brahmanas and the great sin attached thereof must be accepted as fact even though one is in knowledge about the factual nature of the eternal reality of the soul's immortality. Vasansi जीर्णानि यथा विहाय नवानि ग्रहणाति नरो प्राणी तथा शरीराणि विहाय जीर्णा न्यन्यानि संयाति नवानि देहि. Although by reflection it can be clearly understood that the soul is indestructible and not to be lamented for, yet and still the physical body is destructible. With the termination in battle of the physical body of a very dear one such as preceptor, protector or loved ones, the separation from whom will undoubtedly cause deep lamentation. To categorically clarify this misusage, Lord Krishna explains that just as there is no grief when one discards old worn-out garments and there is joy at accepting new garments, in the same way the embodied soul discarding old worn-out bodies joyfully accepts new ones. So if preceptors like Bhisma were to lose their body in this war of righteousness, then they would receive a new and better physical body in their next life, and it would be beneficial for them and not unfavorable. Naina chindanti shastrani naina dahati pavaka chayana kledayantyapon shoshati maruta. It could be interjected that just as in a burning house the occupants of the house are burned along with it, so also in the case of the soul, if the physical body is burnt or cut, might not the soul be burnt or cut as well? To annihilate this misconception, the Supreme Lord Krishna explains that never can the soul be cut by weapons, never can the soul be burned by fire, never can the soul be moistened by water, and never can the soul be withered by air. Although only one use of the word na, meaning never, would have been sufficient to establish the premise of utter futility in trying to destroy the soul, it is used 4 times to strengthen the emphasis, ensuring there is not even the slightest vestige of doubt. Achedyoyamudahyoyamukaledyo shoshya evats Nityah sarvagatah sthanurachaloyam sanatnah. In this verse, Lord Krishna states the reasons why the soul can never be destroyed, and these 3 descriptions are because the soul is incombustible, insoluble and unwitherable. Why is this so? Because the soul is nitya or eternal. Only the transitory physical body can be burned, moistened or withered. The soul is extremely subtle, subatomic in nature, and sarvagata meaning all-pervading. Being all-pervasive, the soul is extremely suprasubtle, more so than air or even than atoms. Being the subtlest of the subtlest, it is sthanu or unchangeable, as it is incapable of being modified in any way. As it is akala or permanent, it is devoid of any nature of change and constant, and as it is constant, it is sannata or everlasting and eternally existing. Avyaktoyam chintyoyam vikaryoyam uchate tasmadeva viditvaina nanushochitumarhasi. In this verse, Lord Krishna gives additional reasons why one should never grieve for the soul. Because the soul is unmanifest, it is not able to be cut or burned like objects which are manifest in this world, and being unmanifest, it is inconceivable, as it is not possible to equate it with the form or nature of anything that one could imagine in the material existence. Being unable to imagine the constitution of the soul indicates it is immutable because it is devoid of any process of modification, for example milk transforming to yogurt. Therefore, comprehending the nature and quality of the soul as enunciated above, one should not be under the delusion of lamentation. Ath chayana nityajata nityam va manyase mrutav tathapi tva mahabaho naivam shochitumarhasi. In this way, after establishing the eternal reality of the soul's immortality according to the authority of Vedic scripture, the Supreme Lord Krishna describes that it is not intelligent to lament about it, even if one accepts the hypothesis of the Digambaras who believe that the soul is the same size as the body and is born and experiences death along with the body. This is referred to by the particle the meaning if, however, indicating according to another view. Accepting even this other view that the soul is constantly being born and constantly dying, there is still no reason to lament about it, and the reason why Lord Krishna reveals in the next verse. Jatasya hi dhruvo mrutyur dhruva janma mrutasyach tasmad pariharyarthe ntva shochitumarhasi. In this way, after establishing the eternal reality of the soul's immortality according to the authority of Vedic scripture, the Supreme Lord Krishna describes that it is not intelligent to lament about it, even if one accepts the hypothesis of the Digambaras who believe that the soul is the same size as the body and is born and experiences death along with the body. This is referred to by the particle the meaning if, however, indicating according to another view. Accepting even this other view that the soul is constantly being born and constantly dying, there is still no reason to lament about it, and the reason why Lord Krishna reveals in the next verse. Avyaktadini bhutani vyaktamadhyani bharat avyaktanidhananev tatra ka paridevana. Even when the soul has departed from the physical body and no longer connected as is inevitable at the time of death, and the bodies of respected elders like Bhishma are no longer perceptible, still what is the necessity for grief? To this Lord Krishna states that all is unmanifest in its primordial state, which is characterized by the three qualities known as Sattva, Rajas and Tamas, and which is a prior stage of creation to the illusory energy and material creation. All living entities have bodies in substratum as consciousness, and this is the original matter of all existence, which is beyond perception due to its being extremely subtle and subatomic in essence. But this in no way indicates that there is before all this an antecedent non-existence, as the logicians and the impersonalizers opine, due to their inability to perceive this extremely subtle, subatomic nature. This original matter, although extremely subtle and subatomic, is revealed in the Vedic scriptures and is perceived by one whose consciousness has attained the realization of that state. Thus they are of the same nature, although there is modification during the intermediate stage from birth to death, as is established in the Vedanta Sutra 2.15-16 of Vedavyasa, which states, because of the existence of the cause, the effect is perceived. The effect is non-different from the cause, although being posterior because it is existent in the cause. It should not under any circumstances be erroneously assumed or mistakenly believed that from a non-existent condition the existent was produced, and that because of the cause being non-existent then the effect is non-existent, and thus the world is also non-existent. This has already been refuted and clarified by Vedavyasa in Vedanta Sutra 2.19, where it states that as a cloth is non-different from its threads, an effect is also non-different from its cause. So how can it be reconciled that the something can be produced from nothing, as those hypothesizing that existence can manifest from the non-existent? If we were to accept our origin as being non-existent, then we can accept that the all of sesame seeds is produced from sand, but this has never been seen or heard. Because it is subatomic, it is imperceptible, and yet it is still existing. Therefore, in the matter of the existence of living entities, the unmanifest, imperceptibly subtle, transforms itself into the manifest by modification, which is known as birth, and after some time again transforms itself into the unmanifest, which is known as death. So when the correct understanding of birth and death is realized, then what possibly is the necessity for lamentation, as it is not befitting one who is situated in spiritual intelligence. Ashcharyavat pashyati kaschidena आश्चर्यववदति तथैव चान्यः आश्चर्यच्चयन्मन्यः शृणोति. Shrutvapena Vedan Chaiv Kaschit. It may be postulated that in regard to the physical body, which is actually the transformation of insentient primordial matter, that it will merge again into its origins at the end. But such is not the case here. The soul is always referred to as being eternal. This is because it is immutable by nature. The soul is extremely difficult to realize due to its supra-subtlety, but it does not become perceptible simply because it is different from the physical body. So the soul is referred to in this verse as being amazing. It is those beings out of millions of beings who by devotion to Lord Krishna have received the mercy to be free from physical attachment and purify their hearts in order to perceive their soul. They see the soul as amazing. In what way is the soul amazing? The soul is more amazing than anything experienced previously because it is transcendent to everything experienced in the material existence. It is not only amazing to the one who perceives the soul as amazing, but also to the preceptor who describes the soul as amazing, and to the disciple who learns from the preceptor that the soul is amazing as well. There is nothing in material existence that the soul can be compared with. So some others, although hearing about the soul, are still unable to comprehend it. The understanding is that the perceiver of the soul, the preceptor who describes the soul, and the disciple who learns about the soul are all exceedingly difficult to gain association with in life. Dehi nityam vadhyoyam dehe sarvasya bharat. Tasmat sarvani bhutani ntva shochitumarhasi. By the distinctive singular use of the soul being embodied in this verse, it is clear that Arjuna is not under illusion that all souls are one. So Lord Krishna speaks of the soul within the body of every living entity, indicating different bodies for different species, all being receptacles of enjoyment in variegated ways. But due to the reality that all souls are immortal, it does not behove Arjuna to lament, as the soul is always entering into various external forms until liberation has been achieved. Swadharmampi chavekshyan vikampitumarhasi. Dharmyadhi yuddha shreyonya kshatriyasya vidyate. Having established the fact that it is not intelligent to lament about the soul of any living entity, Lord Krishna subsequently responds to Arjuna's supplication of what is in his highest good with the word Swadharmam, or principles of righteousness. Not only considering the nature of the soul, but one's duty is indicated here as well. Lord Krishna is emphasizing this to Arjuna so that he will follow his duty as a Kshatriya and act like a warrior. For to act contrary and hesitate or waver is not in accordance with Kshatriya code according to Vedic scriptures, and such a deviation by Arjuna would be considered an act of unrighteousness. What then is duty? Righteousness is duty which is not separate from those who are righteous. For a Kshatriya there is nothing more welcome than the opportunity to fight a battle to protect righteousness. As it is stated in Yagnavalkya, that the steps taken in warfare are as sacrifices themselves for those who do not turn their backs from battle even though wounded. It is to be understood that Arjuna's previous lamentations, such as feeling sympathy for his relatives in battle arrayed against him, his body shaking and his hair standing on end, his mind reeling and his loss of equilibrium, are all unfavorable to him in executing his duty and thus are not appropriate in this situation. Yarcha chopanna swargadvarm pavotam. Sukhinah kshatriyah parth labhante yuddhamidrusham. Normally one achieves well-being after great effort, whereas Arjuna is able to achieve it without any effort. This is indicated by the words Yadrachaya Uppannam, arrived at on its own accord. It is only the most fortunate among Kshatriyas who get such unsolicited opportunities without effort. For a Kshatriya who fights bravely, war brings fame and opulence in this life and the next. By engaging in battle for a righteous cause, exhibiting outstanding valor, one's glory is guaranteed. But what happens to those who are slain? Here Lord Krishna confirms that for the valorous who fall in battle there is an open door directly to the heavenly planets, the same as for the yogis who fall short of achieving liberation. अथ चेतधवमिम धर्म्यम संग्रामन करिष्यसि ततः स्वधर्म कीर्तिच हित्वा पापम वाप्स्यसि. Now Lord Krishna responds to Arjuna's previous distress of not wanting to slay his enemies such as Bhishma and Drona, but instead to allow his enemies to slay him. The use of the word atha is to emphasize another point of view, that if Arjuna declines to fight this righteous war and chooses to disregard the acquisition of happiness in either this world or the heavenly worlds as enjoined in the Vedic scriptures, which state that the royal orders should conquer over his enemies and rule over the earth, then by refusing to accept his responsibility and avoiding the battle, Arjuna would be abandoning his duty, which brings rewards and boundless glory, and thus losing his reputation both worldly and divine, which results from the victory of a great warrior. Arjuna would in fact incur great sin. अकीर्ति चापि भूतानि कथिष्यन्ति तेव्या संभावितस्य चाकीर्तिर्मरणादतिरिच्यते. By abandoning this war for righteousness, not only would Arjuna lose his excellent reputation, but great misfortune would arise as well. This is the gist of using the word akirtin, meaning infamy. Instead of being the valiant warrior, Arjuna, the wielder of the intrepid Gandiva bow, has become timid and fled the battlefield. Such undying infamy would spread by word of mouth throughout the world in many countries by those who witnessed it. But not only Kshatriya warriors would speak ill of Arjuna, but also demigods, sages, merchants, and even low-class Sudras. It might be put forth that isn't infamy better than death, and that one should bear it instead of dying. In the Mahabharata, it is stated that one should try to defeat the enemy by negotiation, bribery, open attack, etc., but should not fight if success is not guaranteed. In that case, war should be avoided. To this, Lord Krishna is responding that this infamy is more painful than death. Arjuna has never been defeated in battle. He is the son of the king of the demigods Indra. He is the dear friend of Lord Krishna. He possesses unrivaled valor, possessing extremely praiseworthy virtues. With this understanding, infamy is much more painful than death. भयाद्रणादुप्रतमोऽस्यन्ते त्वा महार्थाः येषाच्त्व बहुमतो भूत्वा यास्यसि लाघवम्. Lord Krishna speaks this verse in the event that Arjuna might still insist in giving the reason for not fighting as compassion for relatives, and as such he would rationalize that there is no censure or infamy. If Arjuna were to refrain from fighting the Kauravas, who everyone present knows tried to kill the 5 Pandavas in various ways, like by poison and by fire, and then unsuccessful in their attempts tried to steal their kingdom and put them in exile to the forest for 13 years, the same Arjuna who went to the heavenly planets and exhibited extraordinary prowess and valor pleasing his father Indra, king of the celestials. The same Arjuna who pleasing Mahadev Shiva received his mercy and a boon from him. The same Arjuna whose weapons are more powerful than Bhishma's, which were invincible against Avatar Parasurma. The same Arjuna who, arriving on this present battlefield, made the oath, I will defeat all my enemies. The same Arjuna who, so famous for his innumerable exploits, various weapons, valor, spirit and excellence, whom all the mighty warriors on the opposing side are extremely joyous and eager to fight with. The same warriors who Arjuna has instructed Lord Krishna to place his mighty chariot in front of between the 2 armies, and now is stationed by Lord Krishna for all to witness. Arjuna would belittle himself in front of all the mighty warriors headed by Bhishma, Drona and Karna if, with his weapons dropped and eyes full of tears, he was to leave the battlefield exhibiting grief, and all the warriors on both sides would think he left the war out of fear. Where there is no fear, a Kshatriya never refuses to engage in battle.